Being a climate optimist does not mean putting your head in the sand. It does not mean that every day is an optimistic day. Sometimes you'll see a news headline and it'll just totally gut you. But it's a more of a kind of on average, on balance, do we have what it takes to look for the right things and the right trends underneath the noise that we're not normally going to be exposed to.
Welcome to the Environmental Transformation Podcast, where we bring you interviews with industry leaders, climate champions, sustainability practitioners, EHS and hazmat professionals making an impact in their businesses today. Each leader solving complex challenges and delivering solutions within their areas of expertise. I'm your host, Sean Grady, and thanks for joining us today. Before we jump in, make sure to follow us on your devices and visit my website at www.seankgrady.com and sign up for our newsletter and email announcements. Now let's get started. Welcome to the Environmental Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Grady. Today's guest is Charlie Sellars. Charlie is award-winning author of What We Can Do, a Climate Optimist Guide to Sustainable Living. He's taken a holistic, data-driven view across our personal, professional, and political lives. And What We Can Do aims to install readers with pragmatic optimism in the fight against climate change. In addition to being an author, Charlie is a director of sustainability at Microsoft, having led programs for both Windows and devices and cloud operation teams. He's recognized by 100 or by 1M, maybe it's IM 100, as one of the 2024 top 100 most impactful individuals in the digital infrastructure industry. Charlie also serves as the governing body member of the iMasons Climate Accord in an industry coalition. It's an industry coalition united to decarbonize the digital infrastructure that underpins the next generation of cloud and AI services. He loves the outdoors. He went to William College. He's got a BA in physics. Well, that's a tough one, I can tell you. I love my physics classes in college. He's raised outside of Milwaukee. He lives in Minneapolis, and he wants to be closer to snow. Well, he's got it. He loves the snow, so he's there. Charlie, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sean. And indeed, it is actively snowing as we have this discussion. So I've succeeded.
You succeeded, yeah. No, well, you're in the state. Is that the state of 1,000 lakes or 10,000 lakes or something like that, right?
So yeah, we got more than that, but we just stopped counting at 10,000.
There you go. Well, I mean, you like the outdoors, and that's great. I do too, and I think any environmental loving person is kind of drawn to nature. That's where they first, I think, get their passion for preserving our environment and doing what we can to preserve it and conserve it for future generations and for our own benefits. So I think that's a great segue into what you've been doing and why you wrote the book. I mean, so what motivated you to write What We Can Do, and how does it differ from other climate books that often focus on like the crisis is happening and, more than, and rather than, making it an optimistic view book?
Yeah, it's a great question. Now, there's the cheeky answer, which is it was COVID and I was really bored. I was just playing a lot of video games on my couch and I wanted to do something better with my time. But there's the more pragmatic answer of the climate change isn't really like crises that we're used to as humanity. Yeah. Most crises that we're used to tend to be relatively short-lived. And so, we're really good as humans at galvanizing against short-term crisis. Like if your house were to catch on fire, people would hopefully kind of arrange themselves quickly to be able to, extract you and save you. Mm-hmm. But like if the house is just simmering and it's been simmering for decades, the crisis language kind of burns people out, and it has, in my mind, sometimes the opposite effect of what you're looking for, which is some people feel so overwhelmed that they just give up. And if they're giving up, well, they're basically, it's no better than being a climate denier in many regards, because your actions end up being the same. You're like, nothing I do matters, so why do anything? And then, you go and live a life that might not necessarily help the planet. But the good news is, we all can do something. It's why I called it What We Can Do, and we'll obviously get into the details. But just by virtue of some of the things I've seen in my professional career as a long-term sustainability professional in Microsoft currently, is there are so many things we can do in our personal lives, in our professional lives, in our political lives, if we only kind of know where to look and have the real grounded data to to understand the real important things to make a difference. So like, obviously turning off the lights when you are out of a room is a great place to start, but now we can like quantify like how valuable is that compared to driving an electric vehicle or, you know, eating chicken instead of beef. Like that's where it gets really fun, is the data is here to make us more empowered than ever.
Yeah, when I read the book, I was trying to wrap my head around that data process. Like, how am I quantifying the impact of, you know, the various activities, whether that's buying a car, recycling, you know, curbside recycling, driving back and forth to work, all of those data points for emission calculations can be extremely daunting for people to go wrap their head around. And at that point, you kind of just like, I give up. I can't figure this out. Right. I mean, I think there's a challenge there with a lot of people that want to do good,
Right.
but really can't wrap their head around, how do I even figure out the bad I'm doing or the good I am impacting, right? Because it's too complicated to get the data.
Well, it's not just too complicated, it's sometimes literally impossible.
Right.
So, you know, I say it in the book, we're kind of at day one of carbon accounting. And your listeners are like, oh God, he's already talking about accounting. It's like 3 minutes in, but hold on, because it's quite a fun topic. This is literally just the same thing as figuring out how many calories are in your food. You know, there had to be a lot of work to figure out how to actually do that and then standardize it so you could see that across everything. The industry is learning how to do that, but for carbon emissions, for greenhouse gas emissions. And that is awesome. And eventually, my dream is that that becomes ubiquitous across pretty much every product. You can already see it in some places, like Sweet Green will actually put the carbon footprint of your meal next to it. And there's actually a local ice cream shop here in Minnesota that has the carbon footprint or the relative environmental impact of the ice cream flavor that you pick. Like,
Oh,
it's
wow.
starting to permeate,
Okay.
but until it permeates all the way, kind of understanding what are the frameworks and the general guidelines now that we have data on some of the things, I really do feel helps us make the more sustainable decision in most everything now. And we can get into exactly what that is, of course.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you describe yourself as a climate optimist. How did you balance optimism with the urgency of this climate crisis? Because a lot of people put out there this existential threat, you know, like this is, you know, we're going to all die, you know, anytime, you know, soon if we don't change by 2050. And I think that's a little overshooting the existential threat that we really do face. However, I feel like there is reality in this climate issue that we need to address, that we should be paying attention to. It's just, how do we do it in a, I guess, meaningful way that society wise, we don't hurt ourselves, like everyone's financially struggling because we've, you know, adopted these crazy policies that we can't really deliver on right away. And anyways, I think there's just like this whole thing. So I want to be optimistic about it and do the right thing. But how do you balance all this?
No, it's an awesome question. And I also want to clarify, when I say optimism, like, who am I targeting with that message? If you are, you know, watching your house get flooded away, I am not telling you to be more optimistic that you've just become a victim of climate change. Obviously not.
You're a victim.
the focus that I'm on is around, you know, for those of us who are fortunate enough to be able to be part of the solution, the optimism language is a pragmatic language. And it's not just like, oh, let's feel better about things. It's, oh, actually, if we turn the way we think about things as a crisis and a challenge and a fear into an opportunity and something that can bring us joy working on the solutions, that's really important, not just for ourselves and our own ability to not burn out, but also for our ability to pull other people who might not have started on their journey into the space. It's one of the things I saw was so critical in my day job is, you know, so much of the actual sustainability work happens by people with regular jobs, people who do not have a sustainability background, and they would much rather be inspired into coming and helping you rather than shamed and saying like, oh, if you don't change the design of this mouse, then we're going to write a strongly worded letter against you. Like, I mean, like, that's kind of the sad reality, Sean, and you know this just as well as I do, is a lot of times you don't have a ton of leverage in sustainability. And so it's being more intentional and pragmatic around like, well, in a world where I might not have any technical leverage against other people to get them to do what I want to do, what are the other ways that actually get people excited to want to do things? And that's where optimism in my mind really fits in.
Well, that's good. I mean, yeah, I think there's some good themes in the book I want to get to I really liked that you touched on. And I think when I started to read the book and I really was going through the first couple chapters, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much thought that goes into does everybody really think like this? Does everyone really want to know their carbon impact? I mean, because we're starting to get concerned just as I was reading, going, oh my gosh, there's a lot of thought that goes into every step, every practice, everything you do in life. And will society, or the common man, so to speak, person, woman, read this, go, oh yeah, I'm aligning with this because I think like this every day. It's really affecting me, my core being, right? So I was kind of wondering, like, wow, okay. But then you started getting into some real practical examples, which started to really kind of change the way I was looking at the book. And I was like, okay, this is good. I really like this. So in the book, you introduced some make it, move it, lose it, use it frameworks. And can you explain how this came about and why it resonates with readers when you start really kind of explaining it?
Yeah, that's kind of my fun overlay of something that's a lot more of a technical science. It's called life cycle assessment.
Yep.
And so, for the listeners who might not know what that is, it's an attempt to look at the product you have and figure out what are the calories, the carbon calories of that product. But the thing that's unique about life cycle assessment is that it looks at everything it took to make that product happen. So, for example, I'll hold up my phone. Normally, when you think about the energy of or like what it takes to make your phone or the energy of your phone, you're kind of just thinking about charging it. But what you don't necessarily look at is, well, all the raw materials that had to get mined and all sent to an assembler, and then, having that assembly happen, and then having that get put on a plane or a boat or a train to move to the stores, and then people actually driving to the stores and picking them up. But the only reason any of that activity is happening is because of that purchase of the phone. And so the make it, move it, lose it, use it framework, I screwed that up. Make it, move it, use it, lose it framework is trying to understand, like, what are the impact of making something? What is the impact of moving it to you? What is the impact of you using it? And then what is the impact of you, quote unquote, losing it? I had to say that to make it rhyme, but that's like if you're recycling it or throwing it away at end of life. There's also energy required to like incinerate something if you are tossing it away. And this is such a fun, profound framework, because you start to, for the folks that have started, publishing their data, see some really interesting stuff. And I'll give an example. Actually, it's a fun one, Sean. And for my book, you can apply this even to literally a book. And so I did a lot of work to reduce the environmental impact of the book, which is quite fun. And we got it down to the emissions equivalent of a year of charging a smartphone. A year. And it's like, wow, that's actually already a really low carbon book, but that's how like much the impact of making things can sometimes overweigh the impact of using something. So like, even though I want, of course, to have a physical book for folks that want that option, now that we have this framework, we also know, like, hey, listening to it on audiobook or reading it on an ebook, that's like hundreds of times lower impact.
Less impact. Yeah, right. Yeah. No, that is true. I agree with that. That's great. I mean, of course, I'm kind of an old school guy. I do like reading the actual book itself because I write notes in it and underline stuff and can pull it out and read. But I do like the idea of like, hey, well, why don't you hand that book over to somebody to read, give it back to you, recycle it, reuse it, that type of stuff. Which makes sense. And I think, society, the other day, I was at a Dollar Tree. Have you ever been to Dollar Tree? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
You go there and they got good stuff. I mean, as far as what you need to, make crafts or some necessities or things like that. But what caught my eye the other day when I was there was everything was made in a way that was so temporary. Wasn't like designed for like long-term longevity use. It's like almost, I wouldn't quite say one-time use, but definitely not, 3 or 4, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I was like, wow. And it kind of goes back to, one of the comments in the chapter, in one of your chapters, which I think it was in chapter 14, which was the buying signal.
Oh yeah.
The signal virtuing is what I was calling it. I mean, you call it the economic signal, but it's a virtue signal of people are buying based on their values, right? And so I was like, wow, we're really not making products to have longevity as much as, well, and I wouldn't say everywhere, because there are some good products out there that, have longevity. Cars, for one thing, I think they last for, 2, 3, 400,000 miles. I just got rid of a car, unfortunately, just because the transmission went out, but
Sure.
it had 245,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good run on a car,
That is
right?
a good run. That is a good run.
And so they make them more efficient in a lot of ways, as long as you keep them up. But anyways, I guess this whole concept of being the more of a disposable society as far as products, that's a big concern. I think until society starts to change their ideas of what's really valuable as far as buying something and using it and reusing it or fixing it. Where's the mechanics of the day, or the handy guys who just fix things and reuse them? That kind of is a lost art in our society.
It is, but also, sometimes the manufacturers are making it more difficult for you. So one of my favorite totally bipartisan movements of the last 5 years has been the right to repair movement. And from an environmental point of view, that's awesome because, as we said, there's a hidden cost often of making things. There's a lot more impact that goes to making things than we might normally think about. And repairability is a great way to improve the longevity of that thing. And so, laws that let you actually fix your thing, make it so that there have to be spare and replacement parts to do it. Yeah. That's so important. And I'll give a couple of fun examples here. I'm going to say something that is like the most evil thing I could possibly say, and I hope nobody gets any inspiration. Imagine if your car had a kill switch in it. It said after 50,000 miles, the car is updated over the air to kind of kill the motor. Oh my God, wouldn't that be a nightmare scenario? Like that has to, obviously if that ever happened, don't buy from that car company. But also that's where the regulation and legislation is so important. But also just thinking about the other side of it of anti-repairability and like anti-repair design, that has to change too. I remember I had a piece of luggage once, and the handle got broken. I was like, oh, I'll just go ahead and fix it. The only way for me to get to the screws to fix it, I would have had to cut through the fabric at the bottom of it. I couldn't remove it without putting it back. So I'd have to literally destroy my own piece of luggage to try to fix it. Yeah. So that's a fun one where, if we are consumers, we want to reward the companies that are creating more repairable
better design, right?
Oh God, yeah. But also if we're in the companies like pushing like, hey, can we make our products more repairable? Or if we're just at the ballot box, like I'm pretty sure Duluth, Minnesota just had a right to repair item on the most recent ballot. Like you have opportunities to vote on this stuff or vote for people who are going to report or support it as well. So there's a lot of different ways to tackle something like so I don't go, I can wax poetic about repairability, but I'm going to stop right here.
Yeah, no, that's great. Hello, ET Nation. I want to thank you for listening to the podcast. If you're enjoying the interviews we bring you, consider supporting the program by visiting my website at SeanKGrady.com and buy me a cup of coffee. Proceeds will go towards helping me continue producing timely content and offset production costs. I'd also like to take a moment and recognize a few of our sponsors of the show who have been amazing partners and are ET Nation legends. If you're looking for a drilling and environmental contracting firm to help you delineate the extent of contamination at your site, then look no further than Cascade Environmental. Cascade has over 37 offices across the country and offers a huge range of environmental and geotechnical drilling, site characterization, and remediation services. With their huge fleet of equipment, nationwide coverage, Cascade is a great choice to support your environmental and infrastructure needs. To learn more, check out their website at cascade-env.com. That's cascade-env.com. Hey, are you looking for an equipment rental company to help you with your next wastewater remediation or waste management project? E-Tank is the only environmental equipment rental company in the industry that offers 100% guaranteed certified clean temporary liquid storage tanks at no additional cost. This protocol gives peace of mind for the previous customer by limiting their downstream liability, as well as the future customer by preventing any cross-contamination for all of their rental tanks. E-Tank also runs a one-of-a-kind complete maintenance program for all rental items, including liquid-tight roll-off containers, fluid transfer pumps, and filtration items. The next time you are presented with an environmental challenge, call E-Tank to come up with the solution for your problem. I want to thank one of our sponsors, WasteLink. WasteLink is the all-in-one software platform transforming how environmental professionals manage waste, connecting generators, service providers, and disposal facilities in a way that is simple, connected, and transparent. Their platform helps streamline everything from waste profiling and routing to inventory management and billing, giving you the tools you need to operate more efficiently and reduce cost. Whether you're a generator looking for better options or a service provider seeking greater efficiency, WasteLink has you covered. If you're ready to take control of your waste management processes and optimize your business, visit wasteLink.com to schedule a demo today.
I mean, well, in the book, you kind of outline top 10 actions you highlight that you think have the greatest potential impact if widely adopted. Let's talk a little bit about some of those, if you could, and maybe hit the ones that you think are the best.
Yeah, and I think this is where it's so valuable for us to remember that we live in larger spheres of people, larger impact spheres of communities, where when we're making decisions in our regular lives, we're kind of only making decisions for ourselves, maybe our families. And so the impact, therefore, is 1 to 5 people's worth of impact. You go to a farmer's market and you say, you know what, today I'm not going to use a plastic bag for this head of lettuce. And that's awesome. And you should do that. But that saves 1 plastic bag. But if you are the person in charge of the stand, you can make the decisions like, I'm not going to offer plastic bags to people. And maybe that's 1,000 then plastic bags you get to avoid because you're giving paper bags instead. And so that's 1,000x multiplier if you start layering it into your work. And then it can be a 1,000,000x multiplier if you vote for it. And so I remember doing the math on why voting in particular is one of the top things you can do in that top 10 list. I forget if it's number 2 or 3, is literally a single vote for a politician that supported the Inflation Reduction Act back in 2020. That would have had the equivalent of 2.5 years of your emissions just from a single vote. That's how powerful the Inflation Reduction Act was in terms of putting the right policies and the right incentives in play to decarbonize the entire economy. And we're still going to see a lot of that benefit, even though a lot of it's been rolled back. So maybe it's not 2.5 years of your emissions anymore. It might only be 1.5, but still it's good impact. In terms of bang for your buck, literally just going on a Tuesday to vote, that's more impactful than you turning the lights off on your home for 2 straight years.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, those are good anecdotes. I think too, basic things for everyday people who are just living normal lives. I mean, I think most of us have curbside recycling. We have a recycle bin at the house. I think most of us are thinking we need to reduce our electricity use, save money, right? Like a lot of it's been, directly associated with saving money because it's a cost to us as individuals. So it's like, well, why wouldn't you do these things, right?
Yeah.
But I think, those are things I think we can all do. And I like the idea of getting involved with groups, things like that can help change a little bit here and there. Some of the critics argue individual actions are too small compared to a systemic change. But how does your book reconcile personal responsibility with the need for corporate and government action?
Yeah. And so we mentioned, I just mentioned a little bit some of the, kind of supporting the right to repair, the value of a vote for the Inflation Reduction Act. But to that point of the individual action, first off, those are individual actions. Voting is the most important individual action you can take.
Right.
But you mentioned it before. It's that purchase signal to the makers of the things. I think sometimes people just look at their own frame of reference of, oh, I'm going to buy the large bulk bag of cereal because it's cheaper bang for the buck, and that way I can have cereal for longer. And that's awesome. But what you're also sending is a signal to the manufacturer of that cereal that is something that they might want to keep investing in because they can keep selling it. And I think this is something that people don't realize how powerful that signal can be. Within Microsoft, I have been in so many meetings where someone will be like, hey, sustainability is a top 3 purchase intent. So now we have to go invest and make sure that we can do it. And that only happens if people are voting with their wallets, but also voting in surveys. One of the funniest things, Sean, that everyone overlooks is the environmental impact of leaving a positive review on a product that is environmentally friendly. Oh my God, I wrote a whole blog about it. Is, the way we decide what to buy, we think it's entirely us. We are so socially conditioned to buy the things that other people say are good. Like out of curiosity, Sean, when's the last time you bought something on Amazon with a rating of less than 4.6?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I really, yeah, I couldn't quite tell you. My wife does most of the Amazon shopping. I mean, I'll buy a few things there, but
Sure.
usually it's something I really want to get. But yeah, no, but you're right. I mean, you're looking at, if you're going to go, like if you're going to a restaurant, right, and you're on Yelp or something, you want to say, hey, how many stars those guys have? Yeah, you're buying off the feedback of customers. I get what you're saying there, and I'm with you. I think you do want to buy products that have good reviews, right?
It's very natural, very human. But then you kind of realize that is the secret and sneaky way that people get directed into determining what to buy beyond the traditional levers of like price and quality and availability, et cetera.
Right.
And, just on a personal anecdote, I am a big urbanist in the sense of I really want to see thriving urban environments. I love the walkability. I love being able to walk to a restaurant and walk home. And there's a restaurant I went to recently that I just thought was the most amazing food I'd had in a long time. And I looked them up on Yelp and it was a 3.6 review. And I was like, I got to do something about that. So I immediately set up, a Yelp account, gave them the 5-star review, encouraging other people to go to that restaurant and also give 5-star reviews. And you might be like, well, what does that really matter? But I mean, it can be the difference between life and death for some of these companies and some of these products. And I'm not just saying that because my book itself.
Right. Small businesses, they need those positive reviews to sustain their business. I mean, you're right. I think there is a lot there. I mean, heck, look, I'm the same way with a podcast. I'm like, hey guys, can you at least leave a review every now and then? I get likes occasionally, but the reviews are fairly low. I'll be honest with you. And I'm like, there's a lot of people listening to the podcast. I know they are. Every time I will go someplace, like, oh, I listen to your show. I was like, oh, okay, good, thanks. I really appreciate it. But I don't hear any feedback. I don't get it. It's like you put it out on the internet and you're like, well, it went to the cloud. Who knows where it went?
There's our call to action. Anyone listening is when you're done, do Sean a favor and throw him a nice review or a nice comment.
Absolutely. I mean, it's great to get the feedback. It kind of gets you motivated, keeps you going, right? I mean, it's funny. I've been doing this podcast now for 5 years. I can't believe it. Started during COVID, didn't have much to do, like you writing a book, and I thought, well, geez, I got to do something. I've been in this environmental industry for nearly 30 years. And I said, I don't think there's anybody that's really doing an environmental industry podcast covering all the topics. I mean, you've got like a safety person doing safety, you got climate or sustainability, and they're only doing that, but they'll cover all of the topics.
Yeah.
And I figured, I think we could do a really good job of this. And so here we are 5 years in, and we're just still going strong. It's been so much fun. I meet great people like you and others, and it's been just a blast.
Totally. But then in terms of discoverability for people who you don't know or who have never heard it to stumble across that podcast, that's where the reviews become so important too, which is another call to give Sean a nice review, because, and same thing for my book. Like if my book were to have a 3-star review on Amazon or something, no one would buy it from Amazon. And it's not that, right. And that can be so influenced. It could just be 5 people out of 500 that didn't like it and were so animated that they wanted to give it a bad review. And so it's almost like the gerrymandering of our minds.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Anyway, not to keep going on reviews. As you can tell, Sean, I can get real animated about a lot of topics.
No, it's great. I mean, I love it because, there's a lot of enthusiasm here. One of the things I liked about the book that you kind of touched on was every job can be a sustainability job. I mean, and I thought through that and I was like, yeah, it really can if you frame activities you're doing in light of how it impacts from a sustainability lens, a green decision or whatever, right? And I kind of like, we've talked about that in the past on the podcast, but walk through a little bit about the core framework a little bit, if you could, for listeners, because I think that was an important segment in chapter 8, how you kind of discuss that, and how that can relate to everybody's job.
Yeah. And when I say every job can be a sustainability job, I'm not the first person to say it. My friend, Drew Wilkinson, that's, his rallying cry, not mine, but I reinforce that because I really do believe it. And it's from personal experience. There are not a ton of folks in the world with sustainability in their titles. I'm lucky to be one of them, but I look at what those roles tend to do. And so much of it is basically trying to make sure that we build the processes and the structures so that people without sustainability in their jobs can go and do the sustainability work. If I'm designing a PC and I want it to be the most sustainable PC in the world. Dear God, you do not want a bunch of sustainability professionals to try to design a computer, because I don't know how. The first thing about actually, the electrical engineering and all that, you
Right.
mentioned I have my physics background. That's a Bachelor of Arts, which meant I was taking theater at the same time. So I don't think that counts. But yeah, I mean, it's so much about, if you're a sustainability professional, bringing the folks who have the really good skill sets in other things to basically give them just enough insight and inspiration and optimism and tooling, so they can then go and start to see themselves as part of the journey too. So the core framework is a framework in my book focused on what people can do themselves if they want to be that change on their own. So core, CORE, the C is connect to impact. And that's the notion of like, hey, maybe the work you're already doing is like hella sustainable anyway, but you're not branding it as such. You're not thinking of it as such. Like anybody who works on anything with regards to efficiency, hey, guess what? You're already working on sustainability. And these are those things where if you can start to put it in the language of sustainability, that's a jumping point to start to do more. The O is the organize internally. That's oftentimes thinking about that we're more powerful as groups than individuals, and thinking about, can you start an employee resources group around sustainability at your company? Or can you find other people who are like-minded? And then if you all come together, you might be able to have, you're bringing the band together. But if you're just a bassist, it's hard to make a real solid album if you don't have the drummer and the singer and the guitarist. And I'll give a shout out to the flugelhorn in case somebody's in a flugelhorn rock band somewhere. The R is reduce waste, and this is a classic one where that's my friend calls it the gateway drug to sustainability.
I love that. I love that. I love that comment. I was like, oh, this is so true. It's like the door opener.
Because we all see waste, and nobody likes waste. I mean, even if you're a climate skeptic, you probably don't love seeing a bunch of trash dumped or a bunch of food thrown out that was perfectly fine. Nobody likes that. Yeah. And so much of the initial kind of getting started is just saying, hey, where's waste happening around me? And can I just volunteer to see if something can change? And then that leads into the E of the core framework, which is enact the change. And that's saying, hey, I'm going to be the one to do it. And that's like the big secret I found, Sean, is at so many companies and in so many communities, there's not like a good reason that sustainability isn't happening. It's not like some higher up said, you know what, screw sustainability, I'm banning it from the premises. Now, obviously, if you work in the federal government right now, it's a different story. But if you are at a regular shop or whatever, sometimes it's just being like, hey, can I work on sustainability is enough for someone to be like, oh, what do you mean? What does that look like? And you see that everywhere from Coldplay decided to put out a sustainability report to a wedding venue here in Minnesota has a sustainability wedding package, and no one's telling them that they have to do this. There are people who are like, what if I give it a shot? And that's kind of the same thing, Sean, with me as an author, is going to my publisher and saying, hey, the physical book, I want to make this the most sustainable book that you've ever made. And that was really fun for me and for them, because they're like, wow, no authors ever asked us that before. Yeah. But they have the capability to do it. Obviously, we figured it out. But it just takes someone asking and enacting that change to be the start of that movement, to hopefully now they can do that with more and more of their authors, and ideally the entire publishing industry at some point.
Well, I really liked some of the examples you had in chapter 8 there about, using core. And I think the one that really kind of struck me was the first one you talked about, the software salesman, startup guy. Because you're like, this guy just sells software. I mean, what's he gonna do? But as you started to explain how the impact of using this new product makes maybe your equipment more efficient, less energy demand. I mean, now you start to tie all these benefits of the product to a sustainability perspective that people are not even thinking of. Then it becomes this differentiator that goes, oh, wow, not only can this product do this, but we're going to, and probably no other person that, highlighted those types of benefits that are ticking a box that, from a sustainability perspective of buying something that maybe a corporate purchasing person cares about.
Yeah.
Right. Totally. I just had this conversation just the other day with a contractor who was doing some work actually at my house. And I said, construction, managing construction debris and all that. I said, you could easily, because he asked me what I did for a living, and I
Sure.
started to explain it to him, and he was like, huh, he was just trying to put it all together, right? Because
Yeah.
and I said, well, I work in waste management for a big company, Veolia, is who I work for.
Yeah.
And so we're focused on reduce, reuse, recycle. The whole sustainability theme is the core to our fabric of our business, right? And
Totally.
I said, you could present your sustainability efforts to your customers by saying, hey, we recycle all our products, all our construction demolition debris that we take out of here. We do this, and you don't have to. You could just use it as a promotional type activity that you do, which no one else is probably going to be doing, and somebody's going to care, and you're going to get a job just because somebody cares the fact that you take good care of the environment by recycling the plastic, all the wood, all the metal, everything out of there. And then you're like, wow. And he's like, yeah, that's a really good idea. I never thought of that. And so it was like this whole concept, what you just described in here in this chapter. I was like, wow, this is really cool. So I just was like, it is like every job can be a sustainability job. It's just how you frame it. And I think for far too long that I've noticed, the whole sustainability themes and terminology started to really creep up into society, late 2010, or let's say in the 2015 on, people start really talking about it, but there still wasn't really a big push. I think one problem that happened that I saw in the industry was that the waste industry was slow to adopt the language. And that's what they do. They're sustainability professionals, and they were keeping up with the jargon and positioning their value pitch to their customers that they are the most sustainable. And it took them a while. Now they are doing it, obviously, but it took them a while. I was very shocked. I was like, well, we're the OG of sustainability. That's what we do.
Totally. Yeah. It's so funny, and it's not, and I think I want to kind of address what some listeners might have creeping into their mind, that this is not like an invitation for everyone to go greenwash. It's certainly not,
Right.
But it is an invitation to say, like, are we doing things that we're just not talking about that are really helpful for the environment? And it's a missed opportunity to not mention it to people. Like that was, Sean, just thinking about my own background. If folks are curious as to how I got into the sustainability profession, Sean mentioned I have a background in physics. That's cool. Did I use it for my career? Not at all. I actually came from an events role. I took no sustainability classes in college. I ended up in a glorified events role before joining Microsoft to do sustainability work. And when we were there, that was one of my ahas. I was looking at, the topics that we were putting together for our events. And of course, I was trying to direct them to be more about sustainability. And I was like, wait a second. We are convening some of the world's most preeminent supply chain leaders to talk about sustainability. And there's probably in this room a collective opportunity to have some really transformational industry-wide impact. And this company has never said the word sustainability before in its life. So I remember I got with the CEO's communications team, and I said, hey, this is a story we're not telling that we're already doing. Let's make people aware of it. And, to their credit, they said, that sounds great. Let's bite. And then it was a whole company, whole town hall. The whole company got to watch little old me on camera. I was, I think, 26 at the time, basically saying like, hey, we literally just had a massive forum on like what we're going to do to try to solve the future water crisis. And everyone's like, wow, our product can do that for people. And it's like, yeah. And so ironically also, Sean, which is fun, is that's how I got my job. Is one of the people in that community was my future boss at Microsoft. And she effectively was just like, all right, Charlie, you've convinced me sustainability is important. I get it. I don't know what to do about it though. Do you want to come and like start my team and help me figure it out? So in that case, I actually got very lucky that I made my job just by virtue of using this framework for myself in an events role.
Well, that's so powerful to see, you taking up something you're passionate about, driving the change within your company or the events business, it being recognized by your customers, who you were developing a network with, a professional network with, that ended up being your next job. And
it's very lucky.
Yeah.
But it's also intentional.
Yeah. I mean, but it all goes back to, being authentic, right? And being a good communicator and networking properly and keeping good contacts with people. I mean, to me, I try to emphasize on the show, networking is so powerful.
Oh yeah.
And it's such a major aspect of anybody's professional career. And largely, a lot of times it just goes undervalued in our business. People are just like, keep their head down. They're just doing their job. Right. But I'm like, no, guys, you guys got to really manage your network and keep your contacts and don't burn bridges. It's a small world. We recycle through businesses like crazy in this business, man.
Oh yeah, the sustainability world is relatively small. You go to any conference and you're going to see like half the people you already know. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
good to see you again.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Even just I was at an energy event here in Minneapolis on Monday, and then I bumped into a guy who I spoke at a conference with in New York with. I was like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "Well, I live here." He's like, oh, "Okay, that's fair."
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, couple things that struck me in chapter 14. We were talking about, energy and clean energy and
Yeah.
how do we make an energy transition? Because that is probably one of the larger systemic type changes that could happen in society that could have a big impact or should have a bigger impact. And I think, you touched in the book, the Inflation Reduction Act and stuff and the benefits of that. I watched that go through, and unfortunately, I didn't feel like some of the impact, like say the EV grid that was going to be, deployed across the country, didn't quite hit the mark as well as I would have hoped it could have gone, because I still think there's a challenge with EV charging of cars, and at every maybe gas station or across the country or whatever, right? And it just didn't that didn't go as far as I was hoping it would go, to be honest
Well,
with
can
you.
I maybe recontextualize that comment, Sean?
Yeah.
Because the Inflation Reduction Act was signed in 2022,
Yeah.
and it was largely rescinded in 2025. That's only 2.5, 3 years of it existing.
Yeah.
Think about comparatively how long it took to build out the entirety of the gas station infrastructure
Oh,
that
well,
we have
yeah,
in our,
right.
like that took years, decades. And
Decades,
so,
decades.
give a little grace maybe to the EV corridors. It's like they tried to do everything they could in 2 years when their competitors have been doing it for 20, 50, 100.
That's
So,
fair. That's totally fair. And I agree with you there. I just was
yeah.
hoping there'd be more adoption. And maybe I think from an industry perspective over time, naturally the industry will get there, because all the virtue signal buying will happen by people
Yeah.
keep buying cars, and they're going to have to make it more available, and industry will figure out how to monetize and make that affordable for everybody.
Yeah.
But it's going to take time, and I agree with you there. So but I think a lot of the adoption of EV cars is still taking a little time, and it's still going to take time. And maybe, who knows, maybe we won't be talking EV. Maybe we'll be talking hydrogen by the time anyways. I don't know. I mean, there's so much technology advances going on. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I guess going back to the energy thing, if I want to get
Right.
back to that, I did like your discussion points that you highlight in some of the chapters. Like, like what reasons did environmentalists originally have for discouraging nuclear power generation? And why is that stance changing today? That was a great question.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, it is more efficiently, it's cleaner energy. I think we're probably figuring out how to maybe better manage the potential, not the potential, but the nuclear waste at some point. The one that I also liked in the subsequent to that one, which was preventing people and companies from installing solar panels on their homes. I have been, this one has really bugged me for quite a while. I've actually had a couple episodes on solar here on the show. And my view of solar is this: unfortunately, the utility grid's not really set up to be a storage grid for all the excess storage power that the solar could potentially generate if we had that many, everyone had solar on the roof. So that's right there is one of the, I think, the biggest limiting factors that we probably have. However, I think personally that solar should be so simple.
Oh yeah.
Like, it should be like, I go to Home Depot, I know the size of my home and my roof, and I can put those dimensions in, and it'll tell me how many panels I should be able to buy and give me every piece of equipment. It's plug and play, completely plug and play, and a caveman can do it.
So
That's
Sean,
where I think it should go.
sounds like you need to move to Germany, Sean, because that's actually happening.
Is it?
So
Wow.
yeah, it's amazing. It's called balcony solar. And
Okay.
so have you heard of it?
No.
Oh, it's so cool. So if you live in Germany, you can literally go to the supermarket and buy a solar panel from the supermarket that you can then hang from your balcony and just plug into an outlet in your home. And then
Yeah.
that can then pull solar panel into your grid in your house. And it's
Wow.
you don't need a contractor, you don't need an installer, you don't need a permit. You can literally just go to the supermarket and then later that day have a solar panel ready to go on your balcony. Now, unfortunately, the thing that America is struggles with is the ironically overregulation here. And so, like, you know, even for traditional solar installations on roofs, I can't remember the specific number, but I think like compared to Australia, the actual costs of implementation of it is like 3x what it is in Australia. You know, people always hear like, oh, solar panels, solar is the cheapest form of electricity in the world. That is true, but it's everything around it that can become
Yeah.
expensive if it's not
Right.
instrumented in the right way. And I think here's two other things that are really interesting on this one, Sean. The first is, you know, it didn't really click in my head until recently, but it's like when you install a solar panel, the marginal cost of energy goes to zero because you don't have to do anything else for that asset to keep giving you energy. But if you have like a diesel generator or something, there is a huge marginal cost to running that thing because you have to always go and get more fuel and bring it in, get more fuel, bring it in. That goes away completely with solar. And that's why it can be so cheap. But like literally this week, I think the other thing that's really fun around solar is this, you know, burgeoning movement to decommoditize energy. I just made a post on this week. And the kind of the notion there is like, what if we actually could differentiate between our energy based on the source it came from in a more unique and like interesting way? Like, do you ever play Settlers of Catan, Sean?
No.
All right. Well, hopefully some of your listeners do. Settlers
Okay.
of Catan was a lot of my college experience,
Okay.
but it's a board game, and they just put out a new version of it called New Energies.
Okay.
And they partnered with a company I think called Clean Counts, and they said we want to offset the impact of making the actual board game itself. And then they got to like pick through like a almost like a menu of different kinds of ways to do it, different types of energy projects. And
Yeah.
where they landed was on pollinator friendly renewable energy certificates. Basically, they were buying energy from a solar farm that was also, you know, putting a bunch of wildflowers all around the panels to be able to be a pollinator friendly habitat. And like that's so cool. Now I can, you know, now we're potentially getting into a world where you get to like artisanal energy, like artisanal solar energy. It's like, do you want the
Yeah.
bee
And you want
friendly
your honey?
solar?
We got some honey for you too.
Yeah, they literally gave me some solar honey after the fact. They're like, yeah, you have some solar honey, but like,
Who
do
doesn't need
you,
honey?
was that?
Who doesn't need
No,
honey? Right.
exactly, exactly.
Right.
But you know, it's like, okay, do I want the solar, you know, like the bee friendly solar? Do I want the balcony solar? Do I want the community solar? That's like, oh, it's almost like the community garden where like your tomatoes grown in the community garden, your energy's grown in the community solar garden. You know, like
I mean, yeah,
that's so
and
cool.
I think that you know, because I looked into it for my own house, and you know, essentially they came back and said, well, it's going to cost you. I want to say, if I remember right, it was like $55,000 or $60,000 to put solar on the top of my house. I was like, I got to get a second mortgage for this. I
No
know
way.
I'm not going to do that. And of course, then you're like, will I even be in this house long enough to pay that off? Right. Then you know, you're like doing the cost benefit analysis. And as much as you think you'd want to do it, it ended up just not doesn't make sense, which is unfortunate because it should be so inexpensive. Like TVs these days, a widescreen TV is like what, $450 now for like a
Crazy.
52-inch. I mean, remember when those things were like $3,000 to buy one of those TVs, and now they're so cheap? It's like, well, solar panels should be so cheap. And again, I kind of go back to this plug and play, you know, with all the inverters and the connectors and everything. I mean, it should be just I'm plugging them against together, and then I connect it to the box down in the basement. And whether I have a battery backup or not, you can do it and be affordable, and you can add it over time. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't get all the panels at once. You can get like 5 or 6 of them, and then add another 5 or 6 later. Make it simple. And if the industry could do that, and whoever can solve that, I think internally, or you know, from a manufacturing perspective for in a everyday common people, I think that would be a big change.
And this is where I'm going to say something slightly controversial, but this is where the Inflation Reduction Act getting rescinded might actually help a little bit. And that's, you know, you're going to be like, Charlie, wait a second. Like that took all the subsidies away from solar. It's going to make it more expensive. In the short term, yes. In the short term, if you missed your window to get solar on your roof, it's going to get a lot more expensive. That is a bummer. But that also then means that these solar installers are going to really have to start focusing a lot more on their cost structure to stay competitive. And so that can then lead to longer term, you know, efficiencies, potentially longer term deregulation to make it more and, you know, affordable, where ideally we can get this stuff 3 times cheaper. Because to your point, the panels themselves are not expensive.
Right.
It's the cheapest form of electricity we have in the world, bar none. It's just
Right.
all the red tape around it that makes it so that we're one of the most expensive countries on earth to actually install rooftop and home solar.
Well, I mean, yeah, and I think we could go down this rabbit trail a little hole, I guess, a little longer, but I don't know that we should. it's, it's good, but let's talk about a couple other things here. So, how do you see emerging technologies, AI, cloud computing, renewable energies, and all this, you know, playing a role in accelerating climate solutions?
Yeah, you know, this is the really interesting challenge, right? And this is one where I'll be maybe somewhat controversial again, which is if I think about, you know, my day job, so much of you know, how data centers, which is where I'm accountable for, so much of what they're used for is now AI. And so AI obviously takes a lot of energy. I think that, you know, that's pretty well documented. But at the same time, it is also putting a large demand signal for clean energy into the world. And so this is one of those interesting challenges where it's like, well, because there's now billions and billions of dollars flowing into the market, is that money that otherwise wouldn't have been there without AI, like would that still have flowed in the right way to the right players? Now, granted, there are long-term issues of just having the grids like take a ton more energy than normal. But if you're a solar developer right now, you love AI because you're like, wow, there's so much demand for my product. Like nuclear power coming back online, Sean, is only possible because there's demand for that power now.
Yeah,
And
right.
so the hope is that the long-term benefit to the environment and the long-term kind of like kickstart we're giving to all these forms of clean energy will kind of take off and be ubiquitous once the demand starts to level off for additional accretive electricity. So that's the hope. Whether or not it is going to happen is a fair question, but it's certainly one. It's an interesting food for thought.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the whole nuclear energy question too, I think is certainly I think we should be pushing more into it and developing more of it. And, you know, a lot of countries out, like I think you highlight in the book, Germany went and decommissioned quite a few of their nuclear facilities, and now they're totally more reliant on other sources of renewable energy and natural gas type energies, and you know, that's ends up kind of almost being a geopolitical issue too.
Oh yeah.
And then you see France, they've like, hey, we're still doing nuclear and they're doing great. They don't really have much of an impact, and they've got reliability, and it's like the US, I think, needs to double down and make it more, I guess, easier to build these facilities, you know, from a permitting perspective. I think that
Oh yeah.
far too long it's gone down way too difficult. And unfortunately, there's been NGOs and people like that, you know, opposing a lot of these activities when in reality they are a better option than what we currently have.
You know, it's really interesting. So, do you know Bill McKibben, kind of a pretty famous climate activist who's been doing this stuff for like maybe 20 years?
No, I'm not sure I know him.
Well, you know, it's really interesting. I read his most recent book called "Here Comes the Sun,"
Okay.
and he has been an activist. You know, he's been arrested multiple times for protesting. You know, he has really kind of tried to push against the energy industry for a very long time. And it was interesting because he's been doing it for his whole life. Of this moment of introspection he's having now, of like, does our activism need to completely turn on its head? Because before it was all about stop, do not do, make sure it doesn't happen, make sure it doesn't happen. But now he's like, are we the ones actually preventing environmental progress because we're the ones, you know, using environmental regulations to prevent the permit of a new solar farm, or, you know, concerns about nuclear waste preventing the you know, recommissioning of a nuclear power plant? And he kind of had this moment where he's like, wait a second, maybe as activists we need to be going into communities to advocate for people to say yes to these things. And he talked about an interesting nonprofit called Greenlight America that's trying to do that as well. But I think that is one of those interesting things is you're starting to see a lot more community pushback on land development for anything. But kind of the reality is if we want to make this clean energy transition happen, we do need land to be used for clean
Yeah,
energy.
I mean, there's a logical balance to some of this. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just like fossil fuels. Like, unfortunately, we can't really go away and to completely, be independent of, or not depending on it. It's in every product we have, just about. I mean, it's so much. Yes, can we reduce it? We should reduce, but the reality of will ever? No, we can't. We have too many things that we rely on it for. Too many products and too many existing, mechanisms and machinery and everything else is using this products to provide the services that every American wants and needs. So there's a balance here.
There's a balance. I agree with you, but it doesn't mean that like it doesn't mean we have to keep growing the
Yeah.
fossil fuel environment, as we both know. So like
Yeah.
it's kind of chipping away at it in part. So it's like you look at the way I kind of think about it, I talk about it in the policy section of my book. It's like, well, for us to be able to apply clean energy to these things, it needs to be electrified in the first place. And so, so much of the fight against fossil fuels is really the fight for electrification. And so, I'm thinking about like EVs are a great example. It's like before, if you wanted to move around, you literally had no choice. You had to combust fuel to get around for 99% of America. But now that does not have to be the case. Similarly to generate heat, I live in Minnesota, which gets down to like it was -7 degrees here this week in early December, and the at the time, decades ago, the thought was, well, you need to have a gas boiler to get your heat because otherwise anything else will freeze. But you can see above me, here's an electric heat pump, and it is functioning just fine to give me all my heat purely from electricity, even in these really, really cold temperatures. So now like we can start to take heating into the electrification journey, induction ovens, there's all these different ways we can chip at it until we're only left with like the really tough stuff remaining, which is like jet fuel and some of these like very high temperature manufacturing processes. But even then, then you can look at sustainable fuel, food stocks and fuel stocks like sustainable aviation fuel. So there are transition paths out there. It's just going to take a while, and it only happens if the demand for it stays.
I think we'll keep adding more of these alternative fuels and be more efficient and have a little bit less demand on the existing fossil fuel type industry. But I feel like it's going to be around for our lifetime. It's not going away. I mean, reality wise. And I think if we could just still chip away at clean energy like solar and some renewables and things like that, I think that will definitely be the way to go. And we all just need to do what we can to make an impact. I think if we do that, it'll change. And that's virtue signaling. That signal buying is a big deal. Hey, if we look ahead, what gives you the most hope about the trajectory of climate action globally? Or do you have any hope for it?
No, I do. I absolutely do.
Okay.
And it's not like I have it every single day. And just to be very clear, Sean, to you and to anyone else listening, like being a climate optimist does not mean putting your head in the sand. It does not mean that every day is an optimistic day. Sometimes you'll see a news headline and it'll just totally gut you. But it's a more of a kind of on average, on balance. Do we have what it takes to look for the right things and the right trends underneath the noise that we're not normally going to be exposed to? I think you and I both know that most news is inherently, and social media is inherently built for anger and outrage because that's what gets people engaged. That's what gets people animated. We don't necessarily hear the good things happening. And I'll give a great example. When the Inflation Reduction Act was rescinded, obviously that's not great for the environment. It would be much better if it were not. It would be better to have a lot of the subsidies have lasted for longer. But as everyone is saying, well, this is the death of clean energy in America, then you go to the clean energy ETFs, the clean energy index funds, the clean energy investment vehicles, and then you see something very different. Right now, it's not necessarily, I think, right at an all-time high just because the market's generally pulled back, but it was very recently, clean energy stocks were at an all-time high in this current administration. Even with the administration pulling back all of these subsidies for clean energy, it's still investors are voting with their dollar. They're like, no, this
Yeah.
is where I want the money to go. And so, that's really cool. And that to me indicates that there's so much return on investment in this space that the economic engine of capitalism, which I think a lot of people will decry very often when it comes to the environment, and for good reason, but like the engine is starting to work in favor of sustainability because the costs have come down so much, other than for rooftop solar, as we talked about, that this is kind of a long-term bet that financiers think is going to be the future of energy. So, and like that to me is very optimistic. I would have been a lot less optimistic if I had seen the share price of all these energy companies go near zero, but that's not happened. The opposite's happened. They've gotten more valuable.
Well, I think you kind of point back to people buying and investing in products that, they really want to see succeed, even though maybe a policy's not in place, but that's the free market. And if the free market's going to push the demand, then it's going to move that direction and it'll naturally happen. And I think from a sustainability perspective, most companies and industry people would just say, yeah, well, this makes sense. This makes more sense. We've got to preserve our world, the country we live in. We want to be more efficient. We want to provide for future generations. Most people will go, yeah, that's good conservation. That's good, environmental policy. We need to do that. And I think that's a no brainer. And I think that's what we'll start to see bigger, more and more, which is really good. I mean, I'm glad.
Well, can I throw one last thing on that note? Because you mentioned geopolitics earlier. This is also where I'm very optimistic in a funny way. Is if obviously you and I have taken an inherent U.S. bias for a lot of this conversation, but let's look to China. Let's look to the people around China as well. Geopolitically, China has every incentive to get going on the clean energy revolution because they're a relatively energy poor country. And so geopolitically, it's like, well, do they want to have their future in the hands of several petrochemical states who could, shut them off and prevent their ability to, I don't know, do anything? Or are they going to invest in something that is basically a democratized form of energy that gives them fungibility? Same thing in Europe. Now that Russia has been at war with Ukraine for several years, Europe has really taken the mantle and said, we want to wean our dependency on this petrostate away. And the only reasonable way to do that, well, not the only, but one of the reasonable ways to do that is for local generation of assets and energy, and that's solar, that's wind, that's nuclear in France. You look even at Pakistan, and they're like, well, you know what? We just have a bad grid sometimes, and so why not just get my own solar energy so that I can still keep managing my day? And a lot of the grid reliability issues because of solar plus battery have started to go away as well. So there's like all these interesting geopolitical and like company or country level, ramifications for why this transition is likely going to be inevitable, despite the kicking and screaming of several petrostates, which the U.S. is currently acting as one.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this manifests and changes over time over the next 15 20 years or 30 years, but I think most people that come on the show, they're really optimistic about the future and sustainability and doing things that can really change to make a difference. And this is great. I'm glad that you've written your book, Charlie. This is a great book. I highly recommend everybody to get a copy of this. I've highlighted your book in my newsletter, and it's a good Christmas gift for people who want to, give it away to their family members. But feel free to check it out. Charlie, want to say thank you for coming on the show, and really appreciate your time. And I'm sure this will get out next week, and we'll get this out to people, and it'll be fun.
Awesome. Well, Sean, thank you for having me on. It was a great conversation, a lot of fun. Thanks for letting me get animated with you on a couple topics. I hope to see some good reviews start to roll in for you, Sean, from our early
That's right. That's good. Well, I appreciate you. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening and watching the show. If you enjoyed the show, then please share it with your friends and coworkers on social media and tell somebody in person. Thanks for being with us, ET Nation.